So, a few weeks back, I did a review on Artemis by Andy Weir. And I'll be honest, that was one of the harder reviews that I've had to make in the last little while. I'm normally someone who really only likes to review books that I enjoy. I'm not really out here to crap on anybody. But I had such high expectations for New York Times, award-winning author, writer of The Martian, the god king of indie publishing or indie writing, Andy Weir, that I felt I had to talk about it. I kind of felt that I had to talk about the disappointment that I felt reading that book. And in it, I talked about my desire to read Project Hail Mary, this book right here, one that has received so much acclaim. I feel like if you are a sci-fi fan in 2024 and you haven't read it, which was myself up until a couple days ago, you are basically the odd man out. And a lot of folks in the comments chimed in and said, yes, I would really like to see you read and review Project Hail Mary. Now, this is going to be a two-part review. First and foremost, I'm going to give a spoiler-free sort of quick discussion about it, talk about why I think, in this case, I do think you should read it. And then I'm going to have a more in-depth discussion and one that is going to go over the flaws of this book. Because while I think that, yes, it is leaps and bounds better than Artemis, I think it raised some interesting questions, specifically around Andy Weir as a writer, if I'm being honest. So, that's what this video is going to be. The first bit, spoiler free, and then I will be very vocal about when I start to jump into spoiler territory. Now, again, this is the kind of content you enjoy. If you're a fan of sci-fi and fantasy, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. I'm going to, so many more book reviews. Gosh, my schedule for the next month is pretty wild with that, not going to lie. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about Project Hail Mary. Now, this book was one that I think really lives up to what Andy Weir does. This is a very much a return to form to The Martian, I think, in a lot of ways. The big thing for me that really jumped out was, again, not only how hard the science felt, but still how the personal human moments still did manage to break in and break through. And despite the fact that this is a relatively low character novel, definitely did make you feel invested in the characters that you did meet. So this follows one main POV, a Dr. Ryland Grace, who is a scientist who's kind of fallen from grace, if I'm being honest, or did at one point in their career, released a paper that kind of made them a bit of a laughingstock, said, screw it, I'm not cut out for academia, and then said, fine, I'm going to go teach school children, essentially, and ended up really enjoying it. Of course, he doesn't know any of this when he starts this book, because the main element of this book is him dealing with amnesia. He wakes up in a small room with two bodies, having no idea how he got there. Well, very, very light spoilers. You do find out that he is, in fact, on a spaceship, on a mission to save humanity. Now, all of the different elements of this sort of come along the way as he is stuck, stranded out in space by himself, beyond the help of humanity. And him not only rediscovering who he is, but rediscovering his mission, his task, and what he needs to do, because it is the most important mission any human has ever done. The stake of humanity literally hanging in the balance. Now, this premise on its own would have been super cool. But what makes this book, what sells this book, is the fact that you, the reader, discover the past, the clues, the context, the stakes alongside Ryland as he does. And that to me was what sold sort of this book is not just being another hard sci-fi book, out in space and we got to Apollo, we got to save the team, it's on a spaceship and stuff like this book very easily could have fallen onto very heavily trodden. Let's try that one more time. Very heavily trodden ground. But instead, as things progress throughout the story, things that I will avoid because they are spoilery, and the way that the things are revealed to you, the reader, it's just a completely, I think, unique sort of take and spin on this. And I think, again, very much a true to form, sort of that Mark Watney, very sort of snarky, kind of pseudo-charismatic main character who you really find it easy to sort of slip. They're sort of anybody. They're everybody. Like, you've met a dozen people like this in your life, except this person is smarter. Dr. Ryland Grace is smarter than everyone you've met, and has a very strong need to not, I wouldn't say prove it, but showcase it at any given opportunity as anything from physics, biology, engineering, basically anything that needs to be done to get the mission back on track. It seems like this guy has at least a working knowledge of it, which is, we'll talk about that more in depth in a bit. But I would say is, helps move the plot forward in a very smart and fast way. Because this book is definitely both those things, smart and fast. This is definitely a great opportunity for, once again, Andy Weir to showcase what he does, which is dive into the science of something and actually make you care about it. Something that I think he absolutely did not succeed with Artemis. There certainly was science in Artemis, but for some reason, despite the fact that this feels more sci-fi, Artemis felt less believable. And I absolutely don't know why that is the case. But for some reason, even the kind of pseudoscience in this, he did enough to make it feel thought out and make it feel like it makes sense that you're just like, yeah, okay. Like there's a point in the story where the main character needs to use the science equipment that's on their ship. But of course, it's in low G, or no G, I should say. So how are we going to do this? And yeah, we could have done some, we could have just not really addressed it. There could have been a bunch of different ways. No, instead we go through this whole montage, this whole flashback memory sequence about how we're choosing the different equipment that we're doing. We're meeting this other new character. We're creating this centrifuge. We're powering up and all this kind of stuff. And what could have just been like a throwaway moment or opportunity. Oh yes, I press a button and we have gravity now, which is maybe what some authors would have done. We instead get this like chapter-long process of just him like, now I can use my lab. Here's all the science behind needing to use this lab. And if you're someone like me who enjoys science and thinks that's cool, it's just like, checking every nerd box, which was just so cool. If you're not someone who likes to get bogged down in that kind of minutia, I could see this book not being for you because there's a lot of it. There is a lot of it talking about all the in-depth complexities of dealing with, surviving in space and the additional sciencey elements that come with it. And yes, there are some definitely fiction stuff that comes in here too. There's science that is not real. But it is wrapped in a shell that feels just close enough, or in some case maybe is real, that you just accept the rest of it. I love it. It's this sort of Trojan horse of sci-fi that Andy Weir seems to have woven here. And again, wrapped in a quick, fast spunk. Again, Jasmine, but correct. I just don't get how that... I'm going to stop talking about Artemis now. I'm just going to talk about this book. So yes, this book, a massive improvement. Definitely, again, if you are someone who is a fan of harder science fiction, modern sci-fi, I think this sort of exemplifies that in a big way, and definitely a return to form. I'm definitely glad that I read this. Now, we are going to be entering spoiler territory, because while I have been very, in favor of this book so far, there were definitely some problems, and it raised one big question for me. Can Andy Weir only write one book? Can he? Can he only write one character, and can he only write one book? Because it's kind of odd that both of these really big, successful books are about basically a lone person stranded out in space or on Mars and needing to use science to overcome adversity and return home, etc. I mean, if I just saw this in a vacuum and didn't know it was written by the same author, I would be like, wow, someone's kind of ripping off The Martian. That's not great. That's not great. And I'm going to be like, but having now read, I can back to back with this in Artemis, this literally just feels like the character that Jazz was trying to be. It has to be a criticism. Like, it has to be a criticism. He does this one thing so incredibly well. But what this really makes me want, again, I wanted something coming from Artemis, and I want something now. I want to see him do something different. Like, really different. Like, maybe not fantasy, but like a totally different sci-fi. Because what really did Rocky add to this story? Other than giving a character to bounce ideas off of, other than being able to use magic polymer goo to be able to fix any problem, other than, being able to be a somewhat funny foil to Ryland, what did Rocky really do in this story? Rocky could have been a human. Rocky might as well have been a human, because there are two books sitting right here, Children of Time and Three Body Problem, who had aliens in that story. in their respective stories. And the aliens felt alien. Rocky did not feel alien to me. Rocky was just a human who didn't speak the same language, but for all others intents and purposes was like basically acted human. Having also just read The Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey, a story that explores what it means to be human by contrasting that very beautifully with aliens. And aliens that felt distinctly alien, Rocky did not feel that to me at all. Other than the fact that we needed alien tech to really make the story work, Rocky might as well have been human. And I'll be honest, when we first got that reveal that aliens were here, I had only seen like this picture, like that guy in space. Like I had only seen this. I had no idea there were aliens in this story. So to have that reveal that this is also a first contact story, I was like, jaw hit the floor, let's go. I was so hyped. And then to have the aliens, wow, he's a big spider. Okay. Again, big Tchaikovsky vibes. What's going to happen here? This is so interesting. And then to have the character just like, to have them learn to communicate in like 48 hours, to have there be no actual conflict ever between these characters, to just have them be a nice guy and we're both nice people. And then, yeah, we're just doing fun science together. Let's save the day. Great, I guess, great. And sure, there was drama and there was other stuff and learning about Ryland's history and then the eventual massive fun reveal that he actually was forced on this trip. The amnesia was on purpose and that Strat, with the Strats, played everything perfectly and got him exactly where she wanted. I mean, that was sick. The idea of needing to go into the atmosphere and creating this 200,000 link long chain. That was, whatever. But the fact that there was literally never a point where it's like, yeah, humans and these other alien species aren't going to get along. There was no massive conflict. But that was the most unbelievable thing in all of this to me. The fact that we, again, after having just read like The Dark Forest, and the whole idea of that if you meet aliens out in the dark corner of the galaxy, that they're probably not going to be friendly. I don't know. I think not having any conflict there lessened, and again, the fact that Rocky felt so human really lessened that for me. I think also the fact that just, like science, I think you'd be very, very, very hard pressed that maybe this person exists. I'm sure they do. But someone who is that comfortable across that many disciplines of science and using the fact that they were a teacher as a rationale, a teacher would be a detriment, man. You're teaching grade school science. Having this much ridiculous generalized knowledge maybe is realistic. I'm not sure. Again, having all of human knowledge at your fingertips, I just even needed him to like have to look stuff up more. The fact that he just like knew everything off the top is, I know how to do this. I know how to do this math. I know the constant for gravity and the speed of light and all this, whatever he needed. He just knew it. I would be fine if he just had to look it up. But the fact that he was just kind of felt like a know-it-all. And again, you need that, I guess, for the story to progress, but I don't know. Yeah, again, overall, leaps and bounds better than Artemis. Like the whole needing to make the final decision at the end and go and sacrifice himself functionally to save the Iridians. Like the whole just when you think things are going to go well, everything goes to crap, and him actually needed to make the decision that he should have had to make in the first place. Loved that. I thought that was such a great moment of growth. And again, to me, the strongest element of this book by far was the fact that you were learning along with the characters. Like, it's so rare that a book with flashbacks, I'm like almost more engaged with the flashbacks than I am with the main story. Like, from like a structural standpoint, from a pacing standpoint, this book is a masterclass. Like, it's so good. And those are the things that I almost always knock books for. Like, again, just like, it's so good in so many ways. The parts that aren't as good irk me, which is like, like, I guess, if something's a 6 and you want it to be an 8, that's kind of whatever. Like, that's fine. But if something's a 9 and you're like, you were so close to being a 10, like for some reason that's more frustrating. Does that make sense? Because that's really how I feel about this book. But again, I think the biggest thing for me is I need to read something from Andy Weir that isn't the same book with the same main character. And I'm sure I'm not the first person to have said this. Absolutely. Because I think this guy has so much to offer, and I want him to prove that he's more than a one-trick pony who can only put the hard science in science fiction. Like I want I want to see science fiction that's fantastical. I want to see writing that is less clinical. And the only characters can speak in witty, sardonic asides. I want to see more than that. Because again, technically so many parts of this book were insane. Were so good. Like again, once you get into it and the things are being revealed and the problems are happening, and right when you think maybe we've got something on, then it all tumbles down and has to work. But then maybe how can we science our way around it? And then there's this really fun and unique, creative way to science your way out of it. That's amazing. But if that is always the loop, we talk about it in the video game field, the idea of your core gameplay loop. And you can have the most amazing core gameplay loop ever, but eventually still it's going to get stale. And I think between The Martian, between this book, that's kind of what we're feeling a little bit here. There's only so many times you can have brilliant scientist comes up with idea. It almost works. Something goes wrong. Well, now you have to science our way around it. Patch job. On to the next one. Cool, we did it. It worked. Oh, but something went wrong. Science our way around. Like, it just feels like it's the same thing over and over and over again. Eventually getting to the point of the conclusion where you finish it up. I think not having that sort of the fact that like very real being able to, breed the Talmiba to a point where they could survive the nitrogen. And it's not this like one, click your fingers and we have the victory. The fact that it was legitimately a slow burn, I thought was the most honest and great part of this book, candidly, because that is actually how it happens in science. There is like that eureka moment is not real, really, or doesn't really happen super often. So to have it actually, that one felt like that was one for the real scientists. Like he put that in there for the real scientists, the ones who are in the lab every day. So like my girlfriend has a degree in microbiology. So hearing stories about in the lab and stuff like that, that's how real science is actually done. I should get her to read this and see what she thinks about it from a science perspective. That would be kind of fun. But no, overall, this was still like a 4.25 for me. It was really good, really compelling, really exciting, fun main character. You love Rocky, but I wish Rocky had just felt more alien. Like, I wish there had been more conflict there. I wish there had been more growing pains of working with an alien and not just like, anything I need to get made, I have this magic 3D printer that is a space spider. Because that's functionally, for a lot of the book, that's what it feels like Rocky adds. Rocky is just there to build the things that Rylan needs to make the story move forward. And I wish Rocky was a bit more of a character. And yes, he has this amazing moment where he like sacrifices himself, quote unquote. But then they minimize that sacrifice by not actually having him die. So, yeah. Fun book, cute ending, great little story. A more positive, definitely no grim, dark element, a very positive outlook about how humanity can come together and overcome large adversity. Like a very aspirational story. One that I think makes science, everyday scientists, the hero. Like, it checks so many boxes for me. I just want to see more from Andy Weir. So I'm excited to see what he releases next. I hope that it's something more in line with what I'm describing. But yeah, on the whole, Project Hail Mary, a very enjoyable read, one that I liked quite a lot. And again, I have 2 books from Andy Weir now, very different reactions, but both make me want the same thing, which is to read more of his stuff. So I guess at the end of the day, that's really all you can ask for. Like I said before, if you guys enjoy this kind of content, this one was a bit more of a rant and a little bit less structured, but be sure to like and subscribe. Really appreciate it. And leave your comments down below. What are some other books that are sort of like this? In this realm, I hear that Murder Bot by Martha Wells is maybe in this in terms of like the humor elements. So one I might want to check out. I just can't really justify spending like $19 on a 125-page book. That just seems silly to me. So anyway, leave your recommendations down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Cheers.